Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin Raymond. I'm a minister, spiritual life coach, author, and founder of Redefining You, LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And if this is your first time listening to the How Now podcast, welcome to the How Now podcast family. Make sure that you go to my website, www.hownowpodcast.com. Pick your favorite podcast platform and follow, like, and share. And if you are more of a visual learner, you can go to the bottom of the page, click on the banner, and it will take you to the How Now YouTube channel, where you can look at some of our shows in review, and you can click on that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you'll know when our programs are airing each Wednesday at 8 p.m. So remember, go to www.hownowpodcast.com and like, follow, and share. We're happy you're here. Okay, so let's get into tonight's topic. We are going to be talking about from balance to burnout. Okay, and that's something that is been going on for quite some time for a lot of individuals. You know, we have gone through a pandemic. We are still in the throes of this pandemic, going into year 3. Can you believe it? Year 3 of this pandemic. And people have had to make some pivots. People have made some changes with regards to work. We've seen people who have just, who are just, going through the flow with regards to their jobs and not really feeling like it's a place that they want to be. So there's been some professional and some personal burnout that's been taking place, through everyone's walk of life. There hasn't been any individual that hasn't been affected by this. And we want to talk more about that. And we want to talk about how to get from that place of burnout into a place of more balance. And we're going to have this lovely young lady here who is a professional in this very topic. Talk about that. And as is customary with the How Now podcast, I'm going to have her to introduce herself at this time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sola Togun-Butler. I am the founder, CEO, and licensed clinical therapist at Butterfly Counseling Services. I am also the founder, CEO, and certified life professional at Transformative Coaching and Consulting. And I am so excited to be here today.
Awesome. We are so glad that you are here because this is such a sensitive topic, and as the holidays are approaching, a lot of people are experiencing all kinds of emotions and a myriad of emotions. And I'm sure that that's something that you've seen in your practice. So before we talk a little bit more about that, let's talk about what was going on in your business prior to the pandemic. Were you having, what were your clients looking like at that point?
Absolutely. So Butterfly Counseling Services actually opened up January of 2020, literally 2 months before the pandemic.
Wow.
The business started. And a lot of the clients were looking to deal with issues of, depression and anxiety and wanting to connect with a therapist or practitioner that was, culturally competent and culturally sensitive. So understood where they were coming from was very, very important. So the practice was a hybrid model. So clients could come into the office or clients can be seen virtually. And that was the plan, was to keep it as a hybrid model when the practice opened. But things changed as of March 2020 when, the pandemic hit.
Right. And so, I mean, just like you said, so it's wonderful. It was a hybrid, the forward thinking, who would have thought that, having that hybrid would become something that would be, mainstream as opposed to being optional, to be able to have people to come in. But, just like you said, you're talking about people coming in and talking about people saying, well, what, I'm having anxiety, I'm having depression over different aspects of my life. Was there anything that you were targeting in particular with regards to, your niche or your target audience?
Absolutely. In terms of the target audience, we're looking at a lot of interpersonal relationships. So
Mhm.
people were seeking therapy because their interpersonal relationships were not where they wanted it to be. And it
Okay.
was causing them the anxiety and was causing them some of the depression. Also, we had clients who were seeking services due to the fact that they're trying to adjust to a new culture. So we had a huge immigrant population. So they were
Oh, okay.
struggling with the, acculturation process.
Yes.
We also had parents who were seeking therapy to have a better relationship with their children. They felt that their kids maybe were exhibiting some behavioral issues. They were not sure how to address that. So the practice really opened to a diverse client population who had diverse needs. And it was very, very important to me to be able to help clients meet those needs, which was why we had the flexibility of either a hybrid or coming, in person to receive, therapeutic services.
I love that. I love that you do that there was so much diversity there because there are so many issues, and I know that there are so many people that have particular niches, and I think it is important to expand a little bit so that way people don't feel as though, well, it's not quite what I need, but they want to be able to come in and ask those questions. They want to be able to come in and have someone feel them out. And we know the difference between being a therapist and being a life coach, and having both of those services available. And I'm sure that brought some flexibility to your business as well. So talk a little bit about that, because I know you're a licensed therapist, but you're a life coach as well.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. With being a licensed clinical therapist, you are licensed, but you're only licensed in certain states.
Hmm.
So it limits, the amount of, clients that you can work with. So they have to be in the states where you're licensed, which was the reason that I started a coaching business, because with coaching, it allowed me to take my desire to help others to be able to do it all over the country, internationally. I can work with clients. I wasn't limited by a particular state
Right.
based on my license.
Right.
So, talk about pivoting, that was a pivot for me. Like, let me get into coaching so that I can expand and help more people, focusing on issues of burnout and stress, which people experience on a day-to-day basis, feeling very stressed out and overwhelmed with life stressors, the responsibilities that they need to take care of, being very stressed out with work, with school. So that was the reason that I decided to become a certified life coach and open up a coaching and consulting business.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, and it makes sense. So, like I said, starting it as a hybrid business, and looking at the clientele and looking at the needs that they have. Once COVID hit, I mean, I'm sure there was a surge in the people that were coming and seeking out services. And what did that look like?
Yes, absolutely. Once COVID hit, I think a lot of people felt very isolated.
Mm,
A lot of life transitions were happening. So people were struggling with what I call the adjustment process. So
mhm,
people had routines every day. Now, all of a sudden, those routines had changed. People were home more, which meant that they had to address issues that maybe work was distracting them from.
mhm,
People's way of life had changed. And also during the pandemic, we were dealing with people, grief and loss. People had lost loved ones. People had lost their way of life. They had lost their jobs. They were unsure what to do. A lot of people were very scared. People were scared to leave their homes. They were scared for their loved ones. So during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people reaching out for mental health services, which in a way I was glad that there was already the hybrid model.
right,
So clients were able to just easily transfer into that hybrid model so that mental health services could continue. Because
yeah,
if I was only seeing people in person, that
right,
would have been a problem because we all had to, quarantine. So
right.
the fact that, it was a hybrid model, I was able to very easily, transfer the clients online so that they can continue to receive mental health services, especially during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and all the stressors that come with living under the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, the timing on that couldn't have been more perfect, because it's like you said, you were able to transition them because people didn't know where to go, or how to seek services, or if they really needed to continue, they didn't have that option. And so, and
Absolutely.
that can be a frightening place to be, especially if you're at a place of breakthrough, or you are, were at a certain stage with your clientele, to be able to move them to their next step. And now here comes this pandemic and they're unable to do that, or they're unable
Right.
to do it consistently. Or I'm sure that there are some who have gone to, had gone to having phone calls, but it's so different when you can't, see that body language, or see the facial expressions. All you can do is rely on the tone. So I'm sure that that was a bit of a change to make too, as you were even making the hybrid and making that transition, to be able to say, okay, now I've got to, get that kind of vibe from the person, and they're not physically here. So I'm sure that that had its own challenges as well, correct?
Absolutely. Because with virtual sessions, the reason that I prefer to do video is so that I could see the body language and I can see the reactions. And for myself personally, I had actually been doing virtual sessions since 2016 when it wasn't very popular.
Wow.
And I just had a feeling that virtual therapy is going to be something in the future. I just had that feeling
Mhm.
because the clients that I was seeing virtually in 2016, they liked the convenience of it.
Yes.
The convenience was very important. Like I don't have to travel
Right.
to see you for a session. And when I had the practice as a hybrid model, clients that would see me in person, once they had to do a session virtually, I never saw them in the office again.
I bet, because I mean,
Yeah,
just like you said, there's a convenience and things that
yeah,
come along with that. So, it's wonderful to have that platform for them and to have that option, so that way, like you said, there's no hiccups in service. And I guess that's why they do that also for the children, and having the hybrid with regards to their education, because we don't want them to have those breaks that can happen. Because when
yeah.
breaks like that happen, there's always, and I guess in any aspect of any type of therapy or any type of learning or any type of processing, there's going to be some regression when there's a
Hmm.
hard stop that comes,
Yeah.
to services that are being rendered. So it's wonderful that you have those options available to them. So let's now talk about burnout. Let's just talk about some of the things. So, for those who are not really sure if that's what they're experiencing, because there are
Mhm.
so many labels for so many things. There are so many diagnoses that kind of overlap. So, what are some things that people may experience as they're going through burnout?
Sure. And I want to start by just defining what burnout is, because we hear the word a lot and people might
Yes.
wonder what is burnout. So burnout is like a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion as a result of prolonged exposure to stress. So people have symptoms such as fatigue. People report symptoms of depression. They report symptoms of anxiety. Some of the physical symptoms could be headaches, migraines, gastrointestinal issues, difficulty getting through the day. I've had clients describe it as I feel like a zombie, like I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day.
Mm,
People report feelings of isolation. They report difficulty maintaining a work-life balance.
yeah.
They feel like the interpersonal relationships are being affected. I don't have time to spend with my children. I don't have time to spend with my partner. I don't have time to address any issues going on because I am just so drained and exhausted that it's just very difficult for me to get through my day.
Wow. Wow. And that's a lot. That is a lot. I mean, and that falls under the umbrella of a lot of things, like you said, because you're talking about depression, and with
Yes.
depression comes anxiety, and with that
Mhm.
comes exhaustion. And so, yeah, there are, I'm sure, a lot of people out there who can say, and myself included, I can think about, I can think of some of these things. I'm like, yeah, that's me. Okay, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of that. I mean, it's easy to get to that point of exhaustion, and when you get there, and you realize that you need the help, and you go out and you get that help, what is something that you can start someone off with regards to starting to deal with this? How can they begin to start the process of getting to a place of balance?
Absolutely. When we're on the path to burnout, what I've often noticed with clients is self-neglect. We
Mm,
have neglected ourselves and we do not have, or we have very limited boundaries.
Mm.
So that's the imbalance. I always tell my clients, life is about, you take care of yourself, you take care of others. It has to be a balance. What has happened is they're at the bottom and everything else is at the top.
Yes.
So the first thing that I work with my clients on is what is some self-care techniques that you can incorporate into your schedule every single day to
Mm.
get you back to balance. And a lot of these self-care techniques could be as little as 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Because when we talk about self-care, people think, do you mean like an hour and a half at the gym? Do you mean, 45 minutes, jogging around the neighborhood? I'm like, literally 5 minutes.
Right.
If you can incorporate this into your schedule every day to give your body a chance to relax,
Mm.
to get yourself into a calm body, it really does make a difference. And
Mm.
when I tell people 5 minutes, 10 minutes, people are more receptive because they feel like I can make time for that. I
Yes.
can I can look at my Google Calendar and carve out those 5 minutes to be able to do maybe some deep breathing,
Yeah.
or I teach my clients how to soothe with the senses, using your senses to soothe yourself. And that's the first place I start. Self-care and self-compassion. Very, very important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like you said, it starts with some telltale questions. I like that you said that. You're asking them. Are you putting yourself first? Or do you feel like you're defined by the roles that you play in everyone else's life, and that's
Yes.
something that is so critical, especially as women.
Hmm.
We tend to do that. We tend to take on the role of mom and wife and worker
Yeah.
bee, and so we get so caught up in those roles that we don't feel like there's time for anything else. We forget about ourselves, our dreams, our aspirations, those types of things, and they take a back seat to making sure that everyone else is taken care of. And so that's a big part of even identifying that you're in that place of burnout, because we get caught in that vacuum, and I don't think sometimes we
Absolutely.
see it.
That is true. That is absolutely true. And that's the cognitive restructuring that I work with my clients on, because a lot of that is a belief system. I believe that I must do all of these things. I must be everything to everyone. Everybody else comes first. And those belief systems can lead to burnout. So
Mhm.
part of working with clients is restructuring that to say, I can take care of myself. I can come first.
Yeah.
I can take time off to take care of myself. So kind of restructuring some of those belief systems, around, self-care.
Yeah.
Because, I've met clients that wear busyness as a badge of honor.
Oh, yes.
It's a badge of honor. So even to to take
Present. But yeah.
so the idea of like 30 minutes to themselves just to relax,
Yeah.
it's like they can't even imagine that. Like,
Right.
oh, I must be doing something. So it's kind of working to restructure belief systems around, putting ourselves first and self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. It is important. It is important. And like I said, I raised my hand there because that's what happened. We get caught up out. I'm your checklist girl. I'm that person that I have a checklist. It's like check, 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 check. Okay, yeah, I did
Right.
everything. But if I'm not careful,
Mm-hmm.
I can become almost robotic. It's
Yes.
like everything just becomes check. It's like get up 5:30, ding, eat breakfast, exercise from 5:30 to 6:30, ding, make sure that you eat breakfast, ding, make sure that you get to work, ding, 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 and then it just becomes, I'm on autopilot.
Yes.
And so it becomes like you said, a badge where I'm just like, oh wow, okay, I got everything on my checklist done today. But then how do I feel at the end of the day? I'm exhausted, drained,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, I did everything. And yes, you feel a little bit of a sense of accomplishment, but then
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, is it false accomplishment, or is it, am I really happy, or am I just happy that I was able to check off everything on the list? Not that
Yes.
I did those. And was I present when I was doing it, or was it, like I said, I was on autopilot.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And I think too, when people take a break, they often talk about feeling guilty. I feel guilty because I'm doing nothing. And
Right.
I tell my clients, let's restructure that word nothing, because you are doing something. You're resting,
Right.
recovering, replenishing, all of those things. You're giving your body a chance to recover. So you are doing something. And people find that to be very helpful, because now that when they're resting, like, I am doing something, I'm giving my body a chance to recover. This is my time of respite. Because if they feel like they're not doing anything, then their mind's thinking of all the things that they're not doing. I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and they're not really in that moment,
Right.
relaxing and taking that time to really replenish.
Yeah, because then what happens is you're that person that needs a vacation from your vacation because you
Yes,
didn't rest.
exactly,
You did not
exactly.
rest the whole time. You were thinking about all the things that you should have been doing, or getting, or you were tethered to your phone, or you took your
Yes,
laptop with you and you were sitting on the beach, but you were still sitting there checking email
right.
and being on the phone. And it's just like, no, 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 that's not rest. But one thing that I think of when I think of balance, there are some people who are going to see it as it's just it's either up or down. That's what it is.
Mhm.
I like to use the word harmony because I
Yes,
feel that it's more fluid. It's more
yes.
fluid. It's more of a combination of how I'm incorporating my life with my work life, with my home
Hmm.
life, and finding that harmony
Yes,
that needs to be created. And so I think that
absolutely.
that's important, an important point too, that it's about not just, up and down, black or white. There's a whole lot of gray areas we know in different aspects of our life. But I like that you tie it, that you say interpersonal. And
Yes.
that's something that's key when
Hmm.
you're talking about, thought processes and mindsets and relationships, because you're relating to different people on different levels. And
Yes.
so talk a little bit more about that interpersonal piece, because that's something that, want to make sure that people are clear on.
Sure. Interpersonal is our interaction with others,
Mhm.
our interaction, whether in our relationships with our colleagues, with our friends. How do we relate to others? And emotional intelligence is the awareness of what's going on with us, so that when we know what is going on with us, we're more aware of what's going on with others.
Right.
Now, if I am not taking care of myself, if I'm not really processing my emotions, if I'm not aware of my emotions, it's going to impact how I relate to other
Right.
people. And then with burnout, I've seen cases where it negatively impacts those relationships.
Right.
So interpersonal is understanding that everyone brings a story into how they interact with us.
Right.
And when we are coming from balance, we are more able to understand those stories and relate to that person in a healthy way. But if we are burnt out and I'm not even paying attention to what's going on with me, I'm definitely not paying attention to what's going on with you. And then those wires are crossed and those relationships are much more impacted negatively
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And it makes me also think of another buzzword that we hear, empathy. We
Yes.
have to operate out of a space of empathy, and we have not seen a lot of empathy lately. We have had some people who are getting self-care and things like that. Some people are getting that mixed up with being self-absorbed. They're so absorbed
Mm,
in themselves that they are not even aware of other people's emotions, or they discount how others feel about things that are going on in their lives because they're so focused on theirs. So there are so many levels to those interpersonal relationships that you're talking about, that we need to, have a level of awareness. But I love that you said it starts within.
yes.
It starts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And kind of in line to something that you had mentioned earlier about like the harmony and the fact that they are gray areas. I think it's really important that they talk about it being an and world, A-N-D,
Mhm.
meaning that things can come together
Yeah.
as opposed to being an or, O-R world. And that's the and, like all these things can balance together. That I can be aware of what's going on with me and be aware of what's going on with others. It's not one or the other. It
Right.
is that connection. So I always tell my clients, remember, it's an and world, A-N-D. It could be both, not an or, not one or the other. So when we are aware of what's going on with us, and we can be aware of what's going on with the people around us, and that helps create very healthy relationships. Because like I mentioned earlier, one of the many reasons people seek therapy is those interpersonal relationships.
Mm.
It ranks as one of the top 5 reasons people seek mental health services. It's because of issues in their interpersonal relationships, whether it's parent child, whether it's with partners, whether it's siblings. They're seeking services to help improve the dynamic of those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, once you start strengthening those, then you can start developing others, you know? Just
Yeah.
like you said, people think of, well, I'm not in a relationship. You are in a relationship. They're just different types of relationships. You may
Yes.
not be in a love, I mean, in a, a dating type relationship or a
Right.
love relationship in that regards, but you're in relationships with the other people that you come in contact with, and if those are lacking, that may be a part of the reason why other areas or other interpersonal relationships are lacking, because there needs to be a bit of mastery of being able to accomplish or to work on the ones that you're in, even if it's just as simple as the ones where you're interacting with the people through work.
Yes.
And I mean, and that can be virtual or
Mhm.
physical, and because we're seeing a lot on the virtual end now. And so do you think that with the whole virtual piece that's been coming in now, that you're seeing more of a disconnect with some people in their relationships, or how they're processing the relationships because they don't have that physical piece all the time?
I would say yes. A few instances where people feel like not having that physical connection with the other person does impact the relationship. Now, the good thing is, what I've noticed is when it's more video,
Hmm.
that tends to help. Even though we're not in the same physical space, being
Right.
able to see the other person. They
Yeah.
talk about like with the brain, neuro psychologists talk about like mirror neurons. We kind
Hmm.
of mirror what we're seeing the other person
Yes.
doing. If that person is smiling, I'm smiling.
Right.
So if it's just like over the phone or text messages, I've noticed people say, I don't feel as connected. But
Yeah.
if it's more at least the FaceTime and they're seeing the person, seeing that interaction, it doesn't mean they're not missing the physical aspects of the relationship, but they at least still feel that connection to the person
Yes.
that you don't get if you're um, texting, or if I know with a lot of jobs they use Slack, where we're on Slack kind of messaging back and forth,
Yes.
or we're using Zoom but where the camera's not on,
Right.
so you're not
Right.
seeing the reaction
Right.
yeah, of the
Right.
people that you're talking to. Because I used to teach, and for some reason the students that would have their cameras on, I felt more of a connection to.
Yes.
I could see their responses, I could see their facial expressions, whereas students that never had the cameras on,
Right.
as I was engaging with them, there was still that a little bit of that disconnect. Like I can't see you. Like,
Right. Are
you
you
know,
even there?
are you
Right.
even there?
Right.
Have you
Right.
walked away from the
Right.
computer?
Right.
Yes. So absolutely, it depends on the kind of virtual connection, where more the face-to-face virtually, people are able to still feel a connection as opposed to, when cameras are off or people are texting or using Slack to communicate with
Yeah.
their family, friends, or colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, and that's huge because we have become so tethered to our technology and to, like you said, texting. I mean, I don't know what our thumbs are going to look like years from now. I just don't know, because I mean, we spend so much of our time texting and responding to emails, and sometimes our emotions get lost in translation, because
Right.
sometimes people use caps, or they'll
Yes.
use exclamation marks, or they'll say something. And I mean, we've even poked fun at it. We you go on some social medias and they show people texting, and then they're like tick 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 tick. They go to type something, and they're like, no 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 no, I'm not going to say that. So I mean, there's some benefit in that, because before you press send, sometimes you're like,
Yes.
let me reword that, or maybe I need to think about how I said that. That didn't quite come out right. And you have
Absolutely.
the opportunity to do that. And then other times you press send, and it's like, it's just like if the words came out of your mouth, you can't reel it back
Right.
in. You can't reel it back in. So it's like, okay, that went out. And so now what? And so, there are some challenges that come along with that as well. But like I said, getting back to the burnout piece, I know that, once we identify that those issues are there, and we begin to ask ourselves the questions, like you said, am I putting myself first? Am I doing all that I can to, create a space for me that expresses that self-care that I need, so that I can in turn pour into others? are there other things that people can do with regards to working on that burnout? Because my thing is, if you're having burnout in one area, is
Right.
it possible not to have it in other areas, or is it a domino effect?
That's a great question. Absolutely. One thing that I work with clients on also is learning to set boundaries.
Hmm.
And I come across clients who tell me it's hard for me to say no. And that puts us on the path to burnout.
Yeah.
So it's looking at different types of boundaries. There's emotional boundaries, there's time boundaries, there's boundaries that we need to set with others. So sometimes it's not no, it could be just not right now.
Right.
I don't answer emails after 5 p.m. That's my time for my family. That
Yes.
is a boundary that I'm setting with others. So that would be the example of a time boundary.
Hmm.
So or if I am working in an environment where maybe I'm being spoken to in a way that's really impacting my emotional health, it's kind of standing up for myself
Yeah.
and saying, I would prefer that I be spoken to in this manner, be spoken to respectfully, be spoken to kindly. So I look at how do we set these boundaries? Because I often notice that people's boundaries are no longer there.
Mm.
So that's very important. Also, values. Some of the values that they held very strongly are now compromised.
Yes.
So I value work-life balance, and now all of a sudden I'm spending all my time working and I'm not living my life, spending time with my family, tapping into my creativity. That is being compromised. Or I value my weekends as a time to rest and recover. And then you notice that on your weekends, all you're doing is working. So
Mm.
it's also working with clients around boundaries and are you living, according to your values?
Yeah.
And oftentimes people who are burning out are like, no, I'm not living according to my values because I'm not doing the things that I said I was going to do or I wanted to do or what was important to me.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an important point because, you know, some people, once they've gotten to that point of burnout, and I'm sure once they come to your office, they may just be like, well, I'm just burnout in every aspect of my life. I can't function in
Right.
any capacity. And I love that you say again, it goes back to starting with you and starting to establish some of those boundaries that have been broken down. And I guess that's where the challenge can be too, because now you're almost reneging on what you said. Some people say,
Yeah.
you know uh what happens to you is what you allow to happen.
Yes.
And in some regards that's true, but in others, you have people who gaslight people. You have people who
Yes.
will make you feel as though you've done something wrong when you haven't, and then you begin to second guess yourself, and it just becomes,
Mhm.
it spirals out of control from there. So I mean, it's a matter of, like you said, looking, making that self-assessment and being able to turn around and set those boundaries, but at the same time let people know, okay, yes, this may have been what was happening in the
Mhm.
past, but right now,
Yes.
there are some things that are just a hard no for me. And
Absolutely.
you talk, you speak about no. That was something that was difficult
Mhm.
for me some years ago. I just thought, oh my gosh, like you said, I could say no. But
Right.
now what I say, instead of saying no, sometimes I just say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to give this my best effort. I'm not going to be able to do it. So,
Yes.
so I can't do this right now. That's what I do, because you're wanting to give and you're wanting to help and you want to do it in the best way possible, but you can't do that. If your feelings are compromised, or you're not in the best space to do that. So I just tell people, look, I am not in a good space to do that right now, to give you my best. So yeah, I'm gonna need you to ask someone else to do that. I'm not gonna be able to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And you make a great point. It's once we decide to set boundaries and what those boundaries look like, we need to communicate to people what they are.
Yes.
People don't know there's boundaries there if we don't tell them, and they're used to relating to us a certain way. So
Mm.
it's communicating that, okay, these are my boundaries now. And I always also tell my clients, almost like a disclaimer, be ready for
Right.
people to push against your boundary. They're not used to it. They're going to test it. Like, how strong is this boundary? Are you just saying this? So just expect that to happen. And I work with them on how do you deal with it when people push up against your boundaries because it will happen
Right.
because they're not used to dealing with us with these particular boundaries. So it's an adjustment process for us and for others who
Yeah.
now realize that, wow, I can't call you after 10 p.m.
Right.
anymore.
Right. I think the biggest thing, in even saying that, is consistency.
Yes.
Consistent, and we know that even as parents, or even,
Yep.
children, they know who to go to. They know if they go to mom or dad, whichever one it is, and they know I'm not even going to ask them because it's going to be a hard no every single time because I know I'm not even going to bother to ask because I know consistently when it comes to this particular topic, they're going to say no. But if you had
Yes.
that person who's kind of sometimey, well, yes, today, maybe, no,
Yes.
next week. So, if there's not that level of consistency, people are going to push against that and say, okay, well,
Absolutely.
maybe if I ask them again tomorrow, they'll say something different. So no, it's not always a
Yes.
hard no. It's a maybe. And if I think there's a window of opportunity for me to get a yes, then I'm gonna shoot for it,
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
there's a lot. I love that you say that because it is important that even though we put things out there or we set boundaries, that there is always going to be somebody who is going to push back on that because they aren't used to it. And we can't feel some kind of way when they do. We have to
Yes.
anticipate that and expect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
That is an excellent point.
Yes. And also, in addition to the boundaries that I encourage clients to do around burnout, it's trying to tap into activities and things that make you happy. What do you enjoy? What do you enjoy doing? It's really amazing how movement is so good for the body. And
Mm,
I tell people, move. If you like to dance, dance. If you like going for a walk, you want jogging, jump rope, whatever it is that you like to do, move the body in some way because of the positive impact it has on your physical health, your mental health, and your emotional health.
mm,
Very, very important. Um, Also, I had mentioned earlier, soothing with the senses. So
yeah.
what can you look at that's pleasing for you? You have a picture in your office. I love the ocean. Anytime I look at the ocean, it just makes me happy. What can you look at? Music. What
Yeah.
is something you can listen to that really, uplifts your soul when you listen to it? Things
Yes.
that you can touch. Is there anything that you could touch that's very soothing
Yeah.
while you're touching it? And even taste. Are there certain foods that, when you eat it, it's just
Yes.
your taste buds are just so
Mhm.
excited, because we're always rushing to eat, so
Right.
now there's this idea
Right.
of mindful eating where we're taking
Yes.
our time to eat and to enjoy what we're eating. So
Yes.
all these techniques that people can do on a daily basis, as part of self-care is what I tell my clients to minimize stress, to prevent burnout, and to have more of a balance. We
Yeah.
have to take care of ourselves. It's so important because if I don't take care of myself, how can I be fully present for others?
Right. Right.
You know?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's like you said, it's a process,
Hmm.
and I guess it's a matter of people realizing that burnout is something that it can well, let me ask the question: is it something that can reoccur?
Yes, it can. It can reoccur when all of a sudden those boundaries that we had up there, we tear them down. We
Okay.
allow people to now cross those boundaries. They can occur when we no longer are diligent about self-care. I tell my clients, schedule self-care like you would schedule your meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I look in my calendar, I know 15 minutes, this is what I'm going to do. Even if it's watching half an episode of Golden Girls to
Mm-hmm.
have a good laugh, I'm going to do that. So
Right.
all of a sudden, we begin to realize that we're no longer doing those things.
Right.
And then it puts us back on a path to burnout. So I always mention this, as a coach and as a mental health professional, that when we talk about physical health,
Right.
people know I exercise, I drink lots of water, I do all these things. The
Right.
same thing for your mental health, the same thing for
Mhm.
your emotional health. You got to work every day. You got to stay on top of it. You don't
Right.
want to wait till you're in a crisis and now all of a sudden pay attention to it.
Oh,
So it's always being preventative, always making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, all aspects of self on a
yeah.
daily basis. The physical gets the most attention. So I'm
Yeah.
always trying to tell my clients mental health, emotional health every day. What are you doing to stay on top of that health as well?
Right. Right. I mean, and that's an excellent point. I love that you say that because it is. We are so caught up in the physical because if we work out and we eat properly, so that eventually we can physically see the results. People
Yes,
don't think about the fact that people can feel and sense your emotions too. So those are it's just as important for us to address
absolutely.
those as we do our physical bodies to do that and to know what to do. Just like you said, when we talk about, if we start to gain weight or something happens, we know that if we exercise, if we drink more water, if we do certain things, it's
Yes,
going to produce a positive result. But what is in our toolbox when it comes to
yes,
mental
yes,
health? We're not going to use a pencil to fix a clog in our toilet. We're going to use a plunger, or we're going to, so we have to
yes,
have the tools that we need in order to address the problems as they occur. And so I love that you say that
absolutely.
is self-care, and that is that consistency. It's the setting of the boundaries. It's the, making sure that we have things that can, spark our senses, that can help
Yes,
us to self-soothe, because we
yes,
have to be able to get to that space of coping. And that's my acronym for create our peaceful existence. How are
yes,
we creating our peaceful existence? How are we getting ourselves to that place where we can, begin to self-regulate, begin to
mhm,
self-soothe, so that way, we're not constantly, in that space of being on edge,
yes,
so I like that. And that you say it's only 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour,
yes,
because when we start
exactly,
thinking about it that way, then the next, the self-sabotage comes in. I just don't have the time to do that. So I'm just not going to
exactly,
do it.
exactly, exactly.
So I like that.
Eh,
It's a mindset.
Yes, it's a mindset, and that's a great point, and something I always talk about with emotions. So just as you were saying before, like physically, we're like, okay, maybe I need to drink more water. This is what I need to do. But
Right.
when it comes to like our emotional health, our mental health, what are the tools that we can use? And oftentimes people don't have those tools.
Right.
They don't have it. So I'm like, you want to acquire those tools. And I tell my clients, put that in a locker room in your brain so that when something
Mhm.
happens, you open up that locker room, you take that tool, and you're able to regulate your emotions. You're able to process the emotion. I always say emotions are storytellers. They're
Yeah.
there to tell you a story. You need to listen to what they're trying to tell you. And then once you understand what they're trying to tell you, how do you exhale that emotion in a healthy way?
Yes.
You know,
Like you said, it's just like homeostasis.
yes,
It's a matter of, there are certain things that our body does, but I think that so many of us have been conditioned, especially our young Black males, have been
yes,
conditioned to suppress, suck it up,
absolutely. Hmm.
stop crying, don't do that. So they've been taught to suppress their emotions, and so it's
Yes,
difficult for them to, release them when it's time to release them, because they've been told just to, be quiet, sit back, don't
yes,
say anything, suck it up. And I
yes,
think that's the hardest thing for us to break, that conditioning, how we were raised. If we were raised to not express ourselves, to now get to a space where we're open to know that it's okay to express and talk about the things that are upsetting us, or the things that are disturbing us, or to even speak up for ourselves. So it's so important that we do that.
absolutely. And, just like you had mentioned too, the mindset has to do with socialization. How have we been socialized?
Yeah.
And what you bring up is gender socialization.
Mhm.
Males are socialized around, you don't show your emotion, big boys don't cry, tough it up. And so what do? They suppress their emotions.
Yeah.
And if we look at the word emotion, the E is next to motion. It's going to move.
Wow.
It's going to move. But the good thing about processing emotions and emotion regulation is you get to be the pilot. You get to decide how it's going to move.
Yes.
Because if you don't, then it's going to move how it wants to move, and sometimes not in the healthiest of ways.
That's right.
So I tell my clients, become the pilot, and you get to decide how this emotion is going to move. Because you could try to bury it all you want, it's going to move.
Right. I love that. I've never thought about that. Emotion. Oh, y'all write this down. Oh, y'all write this down, because this is some good stuff. I mean, you're right. I didn't even think about emotion.
Motion,
So
yes.
yes, it is in motion. It's something that's going to be in motion, like you said. Are you going to allow it to be on autopilot? Or are you going to be in control of that emotion? I love that. I love that. That makes perfect sense. And that's the thing, I think as I've gotten older, it's things that have to make sense. It has to make sense. Otherwise, I'm sitting there like, what? I don't understand. So it has to make sense. And that makes sense. We have to be able to be in control, like you said, of our emotions and to determine how they're going to move. And so much of it, like you said, is socialization. And I think about the challenge for those, like you said, who experience those things culturally.
Yes.
Because that's something, it compounds on top of the existing, socialization. Now you're coming into a new space, you're coming into a new environment that's unfamiliar, and now you've got to understand the changes that come along with that. And sometimes socialization can be negative because it can be more open in an area where they were from and more constrictive or more, reserved, coming into a new environment. So I'm sure that for your clients that are, are coming from another country, there are some challenges that come along there as well.
Absolutely. And that's why I always want to know more about the socialization around emotions and communicating about emotions. Did you come from a home where you were encouraged to talk about your emotions, or were you discouraged? And also, were certain emotions communicated to you as being negative? Because the one thing I say is there's no negative emotion. All emotions are good because they're there to tell you a story.
Right.
So anger is not a bad emotion. Anger just means that something that you value has been violated.
Right.
So it's let me understand what anger is here to tell me. Because I see that a lot when people push emotions away and say, I shouldn't feel this way. It's wrong to feel this way. I'm like, there's no bad emotion. It's a storyteller. So welcome the anger, welcome the shame, welcome the jealousy, welcome the guilt, and understand, what is jealousy trying to tell me? What is guilt trying to tell me?
Right.
And usually when people do that, they're so amazed, like, oh, maybe jealousy is just saying I want what somebody else has.
Right.
So what
You froze. Right, she'll be back with us momentarily. There you go. You froze for a moment. There you go. You're back.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Now you were making a point about all emotions being good and how we have to make sure that we're looking into how those how we govern those emotions, how we
Absolutely. Yes. It's just saying that guilt, jealousy, anger are emotions that have had a negative rap.
Yes.
And when I tell my client that all emotions are good, it's emotions are storytellers. So when you welcome in those emotions, you understand what they're trying to tell you. So like, for example, jealousy might, gets a bad rap. But if we welcome in jealousy, I've had clients say, it's just telling me that I want what somebody else has.
Right.
Okay, what's a healthy way of getting this? Maybe getting a mentor,
Right.
to help you acquire the skills that this person has. That's a healthy exhaling of the emotion.
Yes.
So, and even if we look at music, we hear musicians that talk about welcoming emotions. Like, I love Billie Holiday.
Yes.
She has a song, "Good Morning Heartache." You know, she welcomes heartache. Come in, sit down. She's trying to understand what heartache is telling her. Or Simon and Garfunkel, "Hello Darkness, My Old Friend."
Yes.
You've come to talk with me again. These are examples of people welcoming the emotion. Like, what are you trying to tell me? I need to understand it so I can exhale it in a positive, healthy way.
Yes, and that's the key point. It's a matter of us being proactive and not reactive.
Yes.
It's to express the emotion, but not to express it in a negative way, and that comes with understanding, like you said.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to what we always hear. Why? You have to ask the question, why do I feel this way? What's causing me to feel this way? What is the root reason for me feeling this way? And it's taking a deeper dive into ourselves. And I think that with the pandemic, for some, it has given them an opportunity to sit with themselves, because it's like you said, we've been so busy, and we can fill our lives with so many things that distract us, so that we don't have to think about the things that are going on. And when this pandemic hit and the world quote unquote stopped.
Right.
Now some of us were forced to sit with it. And I think that's why we've seen some changes in people, because they finally had to sit with what was going on. And now it's like, I don't know if I like this too much. I don't know if this is,
Yes.
how I want to, this is what I want to do, or this is how I want to be. And we've seen
Absolutely.
people starting to seek help for those changes. So I know that we'll continue to see a surge in mental health and people seeking to try to figure out how best to deal with it. Like you said, how best to cope. So
Yes.
this has been,
Absolutely.
it's a challenge. It is a challenge. It is something that I think that we'll be working on, for the rest of our lives. It's a journey. It is
Yes.
a journey. And just
Yes,
like you
it
said,
is.
it's a matter of being prepared.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like you said, we got to have that lockbox in our mind and begin
Mhm.
to pull from that when we get to those spaces where we're feeling like things are out of control. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. So what I want to do at this time, because I know we're getting close to our time here,
Sure.
I want to ask you how people can get in contact with you if they're interested in knowing about your services and things that you have upcoming virtually.
Sure. So if people would like to know more about my services, they can visit my website. So the
Mhm.
website is www.transformative.cc, and that's two C's, cat. So www.transformative.cc,
Uh-huh.
or you can email me
Uh-huh.
at Dr. Sola, DRSOLA, at transformative.cc, and I will definitely get back to you. I'm one of those people, I respond to my emails within 24
Awesome.
hours. So I
Awesome.
always look forward to hearing from people.
Awesome, awesome. Because I mean, you have shared some wonderful information. I'm sure that people want to know more about, your services and what it is that you can do to help them to move from that space of burnout to balance, because it's so important in this day and time. Okay. Now, also, what I typically do is ask my guests what it is that they are doing to live in this now. What are some things that you are doing to cope and to create your own peaceful existence?
The one thing that I do every single day to create my own peaceful existence is to step outside
Mm,
and just sit and admire nature and process my emotions.
I love
I do that every single day. I love just sitting outside in the backyard, looking at the trees, looking at the sky, the birds, soothing with the senses, and then kind of opening myself up to what my emotions are telling me. And it has really transformed my emotional health and my mental health. And again, I do this in like 5 minutes. I go
that.
outside, I sit, I'm looking around, admiring nature, and I am just saying, how are you feeling today, Sola? What is the emotion? What is this emotion telling you? And how do you exhale this
Mhm,
emotion in a
mhm,
healthy way and move forward in a life affirming personal growth type of journey? So I
mhm.
do that every day for 5 minutes.
Awesome, awesome. And that's important. Like you said, it's important to be able to take a few minutes and just connect with you,
Yes,
just to touch yourself and just say, I'm here.
yes,
I'm here.
absolutely. Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. And what better way to do that than to connect with nature? And even, there are some who even take their shoes off, and connect with earth and feel the grass under their feet, or the dirt, or whatever it is that just connects them, because it's about connections. So I love that, we talk about this. It's a sensitive topic. And it's something that, as the holidays are approaching and people are coming to the end of the year, people feel like they're sliding into into home base, like, oh, this year is finally over. I couldn't wait for it to be over. And a lot of people look to reset at the beginning of the year, but that reset is something that's going to happen continuously throughout the course of the year. We
Yes.
we can't always wait for a particular time and a place. We have to begin to set the wheels in motion, you know, right now,
Yes.
because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, or an hour from now, or minutes from now. We don't
Mhm.
know. And so it's best to begin to set the wheels in motion. And I think that can be overwhelming at times, because you've got so many things that are going on, and we're trying to put out small fires everywhere, but we have to, take that 5 minutes.
Yes,
5 minutes. And so
very important.
before we wrap things up, are there any last minute things that you want our listeners to know with regards to starting that transition from burnout to balance?
Yes, I want, the listeners to know that self-care can be as little as 5 minutes a day. Think about something that you love. Think about something that you enjoy doing. Think of something that brings you peace. And think about how it could be a part of your daily routine. How can I make this habit forming that every single day, this is something I'm going to do for myself because I am important and I need to take care of myself. And that brings us on a journey of self-care and self-compassion, which is very, very important.
Yes. All right. And so you heard it here. Thank you so much, Dr. Sola, for coming and sharing this vital information with us. Hopefully our listeners will stop by your website. And that again is www.transformative.cc. Or again, you can reach her at Dr. Sola at transformative.cc. And you are going to be able to go on and see things that she's got going on in her business, and know that as a guest on the How Now podcast, we're talking about what's happening right now, but there are always things that will be happening down the pike. So we always look to have you come back and talk about the new things that are going on in your business, and, share those with us, because we don't know what's going on around the corner, but we're excited about the things that are happening right now. So again, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you on the show again. Okay, and with that, I'm going to say that we'll do it for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until we see you the next time, I say peace.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.